In the last 2 or 3 years, I have cultivated a collection of almost 25 books that I turn to when I want to learn, to get inspired by, or simply to admire. The books in my collection are specifically relevant to art and illustration, as I am a self-taught illustrator who also runs a small art business from home and who also has the goal of one day being a children's book illustrator. Today, I'd like to share my art book collection with you, as I think these books offer incredible insight into art making, but also highlight many of my current favorite artists. To start off this collection, I like to share the books that are in my To Learn category. These books offer advice, tips, and guidelines on a few different topics of art and illustration that I have found quite useful and that have directly benefited me and my development to be a better artist. This is the first book, The Fundamentals of Character Design: How to Create Engaging Characters for Illustration, Animation, and Visual Development, which I believe was the first book that I ever picked up when I started to take art seriously again a couple years ago, and it was also at this time when I decided to start my art career. At that time, it was kind of a lot to digest because I was just getting back into making art after so many years where I wasn't, so I was feeling quite rusty. However, as I've refined my skills, learned new techniques, and began to develop my own style, I'm finding that having this book is becoming more useful. This book is jam-packed with so much information on how to develop characters that are unique, memorable, and also captivating. It also provides incredibly useful examples from a variety of talented professionals and artists. I haven't read this book cover to cover yet, but as I begin to create more of my own characters, I'm sure that I'll be reaching for this more often. Next, I have How to Be a Children's Book Illustrator: A Guide to Visual Storytelling, which is definitely one of my favorite books to have. This book details the process and the narrative techniques and secrets used by a selection of established children's book illustrators. In here, I read about how these artists have successfully depicted a story, and how they captivate readers through the various elements that they think about and include in their art and in their illustrations. In the past year, I've been toying around with the idea of becoming a children's book illustrator, and I realized that it is something that I like to do. And so slowly I've been learning and doing some research on how I might make that possible for myself. So having this book as a guide and as a reference has been really good at giving me a sense of what I need to do and what I need to practice on. And it also makes me excited to start putting together a portfolio and begin the steps to reach this goal. Another of my first books is Cute Chibi Animals by Phoebe M. This book is a drawing guide that walks you through the steps of drawing 75 different cuddly creatures in a chibi style. I grew up drawing and making art throughout my childhood and well into high school. However, during my studies at college and for the first few years after graduation, I hardly picked up any pencil to draw. So having a book like this was a nice place to start when I returned back to making art, and it definitely gave me an introduction to finding and developing my own current style. The next 3 books are part of a series. They are Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going. These books cover some really important topics such as finding inspiration in unexpected places, overcoming creative blocks, maintaining a creative practice over the long term, the importance of sharing your process, connecting with an audience, and so much more. I find that these topics are very relevant in my journey, and I think that we as artists can sometimes have difficulty navigating these areas, but in these books, the author provides such useful and practical advice and encouragement so that we can thrive in our own individual creative journeys. These books are very quick reads, and every time that I've picked up any of 3 of these, I find his words very impactful, and every time I find a new spark for inspiration, and I'm just left feeling that I can get through whatever challenge that I am currently facing. The next selection of books are in the To Get Inspired By category. These books are the ones that inspire me to create and give me a new sense of motivation to expand not only my skills, style, or technique, but also to think a little bit differently when it comes to creating. To start, this is Draw Like a Child, Take Chances, Make Mistakes, Find Your Artistic Style. This is actually a recent purchase, so I haven't started this one yet, but I am very excited to dive right in. This is a guided sketchbook where you are encouraged to express yourself and make art in a carefree manner. Throughout the book, you will focus on different drawing methods and are given various exercises that are designed to help you create art that is loose and authentically you. As I've grown as an artist in the past couple of years, I found myself in moments where I can get too in my head about my art and it can creatively hinder me. So I've been making it a habit to sketch more consistently in my sketchbook and get back to that carefree feeling that I had when I made art as a kid. I've always loved art, and I loved art when I was a kid, and I still do, but now with more knowledge, sometimes I get too hung up on the mistakes and the details, and I tend to try to make things look perfect. So as I continue to find and embrace that carefree feeling that I used to experience every time I made art as a kid, I hope to learn and establish what I learned through this book into my daily practice. Next, I have How to Be an Explorer of the World, a portable life museum, which is actually another recent purchase that I've also made, but that I also haven't started, but that really captured my attention. I found it's surprising that we artists observe the world in similar ways that scientists do. We do this by collecting, documenting, analyzing, and comparing what we find. We study and we look at the details. This book is a guided journal that encourages you to explore our world as both artists and scientists. This book provides so many prompts that really push you to look around and take in the world a little bit differently. I've only glanced at the pages, and it appears that the prompts really encourage you to take small adventures and document the things that you find, and it seems to be a really fun way to understand yourself and what you are drawn to, and so I'm really excited to get this one started. Now, the rest of the books that I'll be sharing in this section are actually children's books by several of my favorite artists and illustrators. I'll start off with some of the ones that have had the most impact on me in my life and then briefly share the rest. So first is Baby Mouse, Queen of the World, and this is a kid's graphic novel that I actually had when I was in elementary school. This isn't the same copy that I had back then, but it is one that I had to repurchase because I remember loving it so much as a kid. I remember rereading it and just imagining and dreaming of one day making something like this with my own art. This book really ignited the passion that I have for art, and it really inspired me to get back into creating as an adult again. Next, we have the classic Strega Nona, and I'm sure many of you know or have heard of the story and of this artist. This book is just so enjoyable to read, and I especially love looking at every illustration throughout the book. I love that the style is simple but detailed, but not overly complicated. It's just a masterful blend that really captivates you as you turn each page. Another book that really captivated me as a kid was The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. This is another book that I repurchased as an adult just because of how impactful it was for me. We all know the story of the Three Little Pigs. It's another classic, and we've heard plenty of recountings of the story. But this one, since childhood, has stood out to me because of the illustrations. I've always thought that the story was kind of dark and scary, especially as an easily startled kid. So I really loved how the illustrations of the book reflected that. I liked how different it was to so many of the other books that I had, and I just remember thinking, wow, these are so detailed. Currently, most of the books in my collection are primarily made up of children's books, and that is because they just provide me with so much inspiration and motivation. I look at each of these books and feel encouraged because each one displays a unique and individual style. Each book is so different, and I know that there is space for me to also share my art with others in this way. Through these books and stories, it is clear to me that every illustrator has cultivated a great understanding for storytelling through their illustrations, and to me it is clear that they really love what they do. I hope to one day illustrate a children's book because it has been something that I have always wanted to do since I picked up my first ever book. The art has always been what I was drawn to, and I know how powerful and influential they can be. And I hope to put that out for other young people to embrace as I had embraced it once when I was little. And lastly, but certainly far from the least, are the books in my To Admire category. These are books that highlight the works of some of the artists that I personally look up to, and I like to pick these up to marvel at and simply just to admire their past projects. Starting off with Wonder, The Art and Practice of Beatrice Blue. I first came across Beatrice by recommendation of another artist named Asia Orlando, who, by the way, is another artist that I look up to and have been meaning to pick up one of her books. But Asia did a video on her art book collection a couple years ago, and this book, Wonder, was one of the books that she shared, and I immediately went to go pick one up for myself. Beatrice's style is just so lovely, and in this art book, she talks about her creative process and how she approaches her illustrations and projects. It was interesting to see the breakdown of her process and to see the initial steps of her art. It is something that I find so fascinating and super useful to learn about. I just love learning about artists and their stories and background because in this way I get to better understand them and feel more connected to their arts and their creations. And next is Art is for Everyone, a sketchbook by James Chapman. I've been following James for over a year now since I first came across his art through TikTok. During October of last year, he did a challenge where he would paint a picture in the style of famous artists to learn more about their art and history. It was a challenge that I thoroughly enjoyed and watched in its entirety, so when he dropped a book with all 31 paintings, I knew I had to snag one for myself. I mean, his art is just so incredible, and I love taking some time to admire the different paintings he created in his style. And that wraps up my art book collection. These are all the books that I currently hold near and dear, and as time continues, I'm sure that this collection will continue to grow. Thank you so much for stopping by and for joining me in today's video. I really enjoyed sharing the various books and artists that inspire me, and by doing so, perhaps you found a new artist that you might be interested to learn more about. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day and week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!